There are a lot of doctoral students who think that they are not allowed to have an argument yet. They think they need to read more first, understand more first, get caught up first. And that belief has wasted an astonishing amount of human time. Because if you are reading, you already have an argument. You just might not like it yet, or trust it yet, or know what to call it yet. But the longer you pretend it isn't there, the harder it becomes to revise, because implicit arguments are kind of stubborn like that. They feel neutral. They feel responsible. But they are not. They are just unexamined. And that is not a personal flaw. That is a design problem. Most people are taught that the literature review comes first and the argument comes later. First you read, then you summarize, and then eventually you argue. And that story is kind of comforting. Beginning, middle, end. But it's also wrong. Because the moment you decide what to include, what to exclude, and what to linger on, you are already making claims about what matters. You are already constructing an argument. The only question is whether you are doing that work deliberately or letting it happen by accident. I'm Nick. This is Dr. Cranky Pants Teaches, and we're going to get very clear about what it actually means to say that a literature review makes an argument. So let's be precise about what we mean by argument, because an argument is not a fight. It is not aggression. It is not about you trying to overpower other people's work. In academic terms, an argument is a reasoned case for why a particular way of understanding a problem makes sense given what we currently know. That is the disciplinary definition. Arguments exist so a reader can follow your thinking, not just what you believe, but why that belief is reasonable. And this matters whether you are in an EDD or a PhD pathway. Both EDD students and PhD students make arguments. Both are doing scholarly work. Both are accountable to standards of reasoning. What changes is not rigor. What changes is what the argument is accountable to. Now, remember that if you're a PhD student, your argument is accountable to a field. That means your claims and reasons need to speak to how knowledge is organized, how theories explain or fail to explain what we observe, and how existing research conversations might need to shift. Your obligation is to disciplinary coherence and contribution. If you are an EDD student, your argument is accountable to a problem of practice. That means your claims and reasons need to speak to why improvement efforts succeed or stall, what mechanisms matter in real systems, and under what conditions change is actually possible. Your obligation is to feasibility, context, and actions. These are different obligations, different emphases, but a same underlying argument grammar. So let's get concrete. At its most basic level, an academic argument has two required parts: a claim and a reason. A claim is what you are asserting is the case. The reason is why you believe it's reasonable to assert that. And that relationship is the backbone of argumentation. Everything else you will encounter later. Evidence, warrants, qualifications, counterclaims, they exist to strengthen, test, or limit that relationship. But none of that works if the claim and reason are never named. So let me show you what this looks like. Here's a statement. Early literacy instruction needs to be more explicit. That is not an argument yet. It is a position, a direction, an orientation. It becomes an argument when I add a reason. Early literacy instruction needs to be more explicit because patterns in the research suggest the implicit approaches systematically underserve certain readers. Now we have an argument. It's not a perfect one. It's not a finished one, but it's a legitimate academic move. Claim plus reason. This is also where scholarly obligations start to show. If you're a PhD student, your reason might sound like this. Early literacy instruction needs to be more explicit because dominant models of literacy acquisition do not adequately account for instructional variability across contexts. That reason is doing field-facing work. It positions a claim inside a theoretical conversation about explanation and adequacy. If you're an EDD student, your reason may sound like this. Early literacy instruction needs to be more explicit because improvement efforts consistently stall when instruction is not clear about foundational skills. That reason is doing practice-facing work. It positions the claim inside a system that is actively trying to change. Different kinds of reasons, but same argument structure. Claim plus reason. Now, here's a quick diagnostic that almost always works. If you want to know whether you are making an argument or just circling a topic, try finishing this sentence. I am saying this because. And if you cannot finish that thought, you do not have an argument yet. You have an area of interest. And that in and of itself is not a failure. That is where most arguments start. In these next few videos, we're going to turn interests into arguments. And here's a mistake I want you to avoid. Do not wait until you have read everything to decide what your argument is. That is how people end up with careful summaries and absolutely no argumentative spine. Instead, your argument should be provisional, something you expect to revise, something you expect to pressure and test as you read more closely. That is not weakness. That is how scholarly arguments are actually built. Right now, even if you don't have it named yet, your reading is already leaning. It is leaning toward certain explanations. It is leaning toward certain priorities. It is leaning away from others. And those leanings are not biased to eliminate. They are hypotheses to test. So in the next few videos, we're going to practice how to surface them so they can be strengthened, limited, or revised in response to the literature. So here's the construction move I want you to try. This is not writing, this is orientation. Draft one sentence that begins like this. Based on what I currently understand, the literature suggests that, then add one clause. Add because. Do not worry about citations yet. Do not worry about being correct. Do not worry about how this will sound later. Just make the claim and reason visible. If you do not name your argument early, your reading will sprawl like a Houston, Texas suburb. You will collect sources without knowing what they are for. You will summarize instead of decide, and the literature will start to feel heavy instead of useful. Naming a provisional argument gives your reading a job. It gives you something to test. If you are unsure whether you are ready for this, ask yourself one question. What does the literature seem to be nudging me towards believing right now? Not forever, not conclusively, just right now. And if you skip this step, the literature review will quietly take control of you instead of the other way around. Up next, we're going to talk about how to read research in a way that actively tests your reasoning instead of just politely collecting it. If this video made argumentation feel a little less intimidating and a little more like disciplined thinking you are already doing, that matters. I appreciate you. I'll see you in the next one.